Welcome to the SwallowedStar channel. In this video, I will summarize the storyline of the Donghuastoryline series in Season 1. At the beginning of the story, we will be introduced to a deadly virus known as the RR virus that appeared a century ago, where a virus of unknown origin caused 2 billion people to die after being exposed to the virus. Different from human beings, while the wild animals on Earth that were exposed to the RR virus changed, mutated, and developed into giant creatures that are very dangerous. And they started to wreak havoc by attacking humans and occupying areas inhabited by humans. Because of that, the era began to enter the apocalyptic period, which is called the era of Grand Nirvana.
怪兽，因此进入了大涅槃时代。全面核打击计划，第62号提案。曾经有科学论证，6500万年前，事实并非如此。可以毁灭地球3次。如果把所有的核弹发射和核弹，地球并没有毁灭。
As a last resort, the military used a nuclear bomb to kill the mutated species of creatures. They hoped that after using a nuclear bomb, things would go back to normal in a few years. But in reality, the nuclear bomb explosion they used was not enough to burn the mutated creatures, which were able to grow quickly. Because of this, the United Nations sent an emergency message to the whole world saying that the remaining civilians had to take refuge in the military-built fortifications in the base city to protect themselves from the monsters.
最可能遭到毁灭的，如果全球发生核大战，人们立即进入地下基地避难。联合国宣布进入紧急状态，核弹未能阻止怪兽。是人类文明本身。
In an intelligent fighter jet, we will see a man who mumbles about how humanity will face and survive during the Nirvana era, where the military finally used technology and the will to never give up to form an alliance of 5 countries so that humanity could get through the Grand Nirvana period and build 23 base cities around the world as shelters for civilians until now. But there's another reason why humans can reach this point. This was because there were beings that were more powerful than humans and fought on the front lines against the monsters. And they are often called martial artists or warriors. After the Nirvana era, warriors have been a big part of keeping people alive right up to the present day. We will turn to the previous 5 years. This story itself will focus on a young man who is still in high school named Luo Feng and who dreams of becoming a warrior. Luo Feng also currently had a best friend named Alwen, and the two of them were currently discussing the peace of their lives now that warriors protected humanity during the Nirvana era. The creation of warriors originating from the 5 combined alliances of the Earth made a huge contribution. Although many places have been completely destroyed, the human race that is still alive is, of course, because of the existence of warriors. These warriors are incredibly powerful, and it is said that they are the only ones capable of navigating the outer world filled with danger. Despite coming from a poor family in a slum area, Alwyn believed that his best friend Luo Feng could become a warrior in the future, as he had enough talent to become one. In the middle of their discussion, Luo Feng also saw something flying in the sky. He thought it was a flying monster, but Alwyn denied it, because after passing through the Nirvana era, hardly a single monster approached the base city fortress.
算了。
In fact, what Luo Feng saw was indeed true. At the same time, the military troops began to detect the presence of a flying monster flying towards the city. It turns out that this creature is a kind of mutated golden eagle level 3, capable of flying at Mach 3.9, and has feathers that are even harder than diamonds. Because the creature is already in its adult stage, the level of danger it will generate is S level. This golden eagle is expected to arrive within the next 15 minutes. In order to stop the movement of these creatures, military forces were deployed. But unfortunately, the monster's strength is much stronger, and the efforts of the military to stop it end up in vain. Because he had no other choice, the military leader then asked for help from the warriors and hoped it wasn't too late. Halfway home, while conversation with Alwyn, Luo Feng was suddenly distracted when he glanced at a woman from another direction. This woman is a girl named Sushin that Luo Feng likes. Not long ago, a rich man appeared with his luxury car and intended to take Sushin home together. This arrogant-looking man was called Zhang Haobai. And not long ago, there was a sudden emergence of panic among local residents. As a result of the appearance of the mutated eagle, who had broken into the base city, causing unavoidable chaos. However, the monster's rampage had not ended at this point. In the crucial moments that occurred, a person dressed in full armor appeared and flew using a shuttle. And of course, he was one of those beings called warriors, where the warrior is able to overthrow the golden eagle in one attack in the air. Of course, after witnessing the strength of the warrior before him, making Luo Feng's desire to become one of them even stronger. And starting from here, he promised himself to be a warrior figure. The scene then switches to Luo Feng at his school, where the teacher makes an announcement that the next day the students will face the academy entrance examination session. From another direction, Zhang Haobai could be seen making an evil face towards Luo Feng. It seemed he was about to carry out an evil plot against Luo Feng. On his way home, Luo Feng's footsteps were suddenly stopped by Zhang Haobai, who appeared before him. Haobai said that he has the same goal as Luo Feng, which is to become a martial arts practitioner. He also joined a martial arts hall in order to achieve his goals. So now here he was, inviting Luo Feng to spar. But Zhang Haobai did not come alone. He brought two other disciples who also belonged to the martial hall. Unbeknownst to them, the fight was seen by a man named Jiang Nian, who runs the martial hall branch. He also knew Haobai and two other youths who were part of the martial hall. But Mr. Jiang doesn't know who the man is who Haobai and two others are bullying. During the fight, Luo Feng suddenly punched Haobai, making the rich boy fall to the floor. From here, Mr. Jiang started to see how talented this mysterious young man was. The fight continues. Luo Feng, who had to be ganged up on by them, was driven into a corner. But with a bit of effort, he was able to defeat those three martial hall disciples in the end. After beating the three of them, Mr. Jiang finally saw that Luo Feng really did have the skills to become a martial artist. Because of that, he asked his subordinates to find out who the mysterious young man was.
3名武馆高级学员。
我能考进军校，除非像这样的小雀，地少人多。江南市2亿人口。
On the outskirts of the city, in a slum district, was where Luo Feng lived. And when he arrived home, Luo Feng was greeted by a young man who was sitting in a wheelchair. This young man was called Luohua, who was Luo Feng's younger brother and was paralyzed due to an accident. Luo Feng also knew that this little brother was even smarter than him. And in order to get his family out of poverty, Luohua started to study the stock market. Of course, it's also that their finances in the future can be better. Together with his parents, they then eat together. In the middle of dinner, Luo Feng also said that with his level of intelligence, he was sure he would pass the academy exams that would be held the next day. After he passed his exams, he would join the military academy and work as a civil servant. By taking that path, Luo Feng would be able to give his family a better life in the future by giving them a new home. Luo Feng really wanted to become a martial artist, and his father felt bad that he couldn't get him into the martial hall because he didn't have the money. But if Luo Feng didn't get away into the martial hall, with his strength, Luo Feng believed that in the future he could still become a warrior who protected mankind. At the same time, it was also seen that some of Zhang Haobai's envoys seemed to be plotting against Luo Feng again. The next day came, and that was when the academy session would take place. Luo Feng, who looked like he was getting ready to go to school, but unexpectedly, halfway to school, Luo Feng had to turn around because of roadwork, which of course took up his time on the way to school. Not only that, but a group of men blocked Luo Feng's way again in the narrow alley. One of the men said that Luo Feng had angered an important person, and of course, it had to do with Zhang Haobai, who was behind all the strange things Luo Feng was going through. Where Haobai wants to slow down Luo Feng so that he is late and can't take the exam. Until finally, with not much time left before the exam, Luo Feng had to go up against these thugs.
打不过我的，还不快滚！
时间快，好难缠，快来不及了。
Until Luo Feng finally arrived at his class. However, the teacher didn't allow him to take the exam because Luo Feng was already 15 minutes late. It seems from the teacher's expression that he has also been bribed by Haobai. But unexpectedly, appeared Mr. Jiang, who was known as the instructor of Jixian Martial Hall. He came to defend Luo Feng because he knew that Luo Feng ran into some trouble when he headed to school. Moreover, Luo Feng was also not late by 15 minutes, according to him. And because Mr. Jiang was a very respected person, Luo Feng was allowed to take the exam. But even so, Haobai's plan to fail Luo Feng's exam was still not finished. 30 minutes after the exam started, two students suddenly made a lot of noise, which of course had something to do with Haobai. The noise the two students made caused Luo Feng's test paper to fall over, which made Haobai step on the exam papers on purpose. But he argued and accidentally stepped on the paper. This caused Luo Feng to lose a lot of time during his exams. Now he has to race against time to answer the questions on the exam. It was at this time that a strange vision appeared, and Luo Feng fainted in the middle of his exam session.
还有5分钟。
After opening his eyes, he was now awake and in the hospital bed. Luo Feng had been unconscious for 3 days and 3 nights, and then Sushin came to see him. Aside from that, she also thanked Luo Feng, who had helped him during the previous incident. Zhang Haobai, the rich kid, also entered the room, even though he was the one who had caused problems for Luo Feng so far. But in front of Xu Xin, Haobai acted like he was a good person and cared deeply about Luo Feng as a classmate. Luo Feng was also very mad at Haobai, who pretended to be nice. But in his current situation, he just couldn't do much, especially with Xu Xin in front of him. With the excuse that he didn't want to disturb Luo Feng's rest time, Haobai then took Xu Xin out of the room. After the two people left, Luo Feng, who was feeling annoyed, unconsciously gripped the spring bed frame so hard that the iron he was holding made a dent. Here, it was Luo Feng who was surprised by the strength he had. Then Mr. Jiang came and said that Luo Feng's grip strength was 300 kilograms and that the strength of his fist was probably 900 kilograms. Luo Feng then apologized to Mr. Jiang because, even though Mr. Jiang had helped him, Luo Feng still couldn't finish the exam right. Mr. Jiang also told Luo Feng that he shouldn't worry about that. Even if he failed the academy exams, Luo Feng still had a better chance. After seeing the fight between Luo Feng and Zhang Haobai, who brought two martial arts members, Mr. Jiang says that Luo Feng, who is quite strong, has reached the level of a quasi-practitioner. The first step to becoming a warrior is to reach the level of quasi-practitioner. The quasi-practitioner exams were held every month, while the academy exams were only held once a year. As long as Luo Feng could pass the quasi-prayer examination stage, then Luo Feng would become a true martial practitioner, otherwise known as a warrior. Apart from strength, there were still other conditions that Luo Feng had to meet before taking the quasi-practitioner exam. After Luo Feng's condition recovered, it was true that on the graduation announcement list, Luo Feng's name was not listed, indicating that he did not pass the academic exam. But even so, now he has another hope, and that is the quasi-practitioner exam. Luo Feng will not give up fighting to become a warrior in order to raise the financial level of his family, which is currently below the poverty line. Therefore, he must complete the test.
国家提供的福利保障就能让爸妈好。我要报名。
Time went by, and today the father seemed to be getting ready to go to work after he got a project with a high enough salary. It was quite a special day for the Luo Feng family, because besides the father, who got a good job, Luo Feng is also facing a quasi-practitioner pre-examination session this time. After the father departed, Luo Feng also departed, where he had been picked up by Mr. Jiang in a car. Halfway through, Mr. Jiang also introduced a man sitting next to Luo Feng. The man named Yang Wu, who was about to participate in the quasi-exam session as well, even though Luo Feng was still very young at only 18 years old. However, according to Mr. Jiang, Luo Feng's chances of passing the exam session weren't easy. According to Yang Wu, quasi-practitioners only needed to be stronger than anyone else, and one's performance would be directly tested when they were out in the open in a fight. But here he did not elaborate further because Luo Feng would find out in a moment. But on the other hand, the path to becoming a practitioner won't be easy. After they passed the first test, there would be a real-life combat test. As Yang Wu said, there were several careers after one successfully cleared the examination session. First, join the military and help protect the people and the country from monsters. Second, joining the martial arts hall. And third, joining a company. And lastly, become a mercenary. Yan Wu himself had already decided to work in the Jixian Martial Hall. Because if he could become a practitioner, the Martial Hall would give him a villa and a fairly high salary. In Luo Feng's mind, if he could get the title of martial practitioner, then it will have an effect on his family, who can live well in the future. While Xu Xin is said to have been accepted into a prestigious company, and is certain to become an elite in the future, because she was on a different path, making Luo Feng worry about not being able to meet Xu Xin again. We turn back to school, and we can see that Xu Xin is now distributing forms to apply to the academy, and students must fill them out right away. She was worried about Luo Feng, who was not present in class at that time. Meanwhile, Hao Bai got a call from one of his subordinates, so he hurried back to his house. And not too long ago, Alwyn arrived. He told Shushin and the other students what he knew. If Luo Feng, who had been absent from school, was now taking a quasi-practitioner exam. Of course, this sudden change surprised all the students. Alwyn said this with pride, even though his best friend Luo Feng didn't pass the exam. But he was so determined that he wouldn't give up until just this point. On the other hand, Luo Feng had finally arrived at the exam site, which was at the branch headquarters of the Jixian Martial Hall. When he went in, Luo Feng met an inspector named Zhu Shi. He realized that this mysterious person was the same one he had seen during the previous Golden Eagle incident. Apart from that, there was also Mr. Wu Tong, who was the head instructor at Jixian Martial Hall. He would be in charge of the quasi-practitioner exam this time. Luo Feng and the others were then taken by Mr. Wu Tong to the room with the virtual equipment. And without waiting, the test takers, including Luo Feng, were put right into the exam virtual room. What he saw now was the form of the old world now known as the wilderness, and all this time only Luo Feng could see it from a distance. After the participants picked up their weapons, monsters appeared, where the other participants, who already looked familiar with the place, swiftly started to attack the monsters that came.
这些都是怪兽！进来，我不能在这里就输掉。
很正常的，我叫力。
Meanwhile, Luo Feng, who still looked confused by the situation around him, tried to calm down and understand the situation. Moreover, this is the first time he has faced monsters like this. Of course, that was normal for a newbie like him. In order to pass the test, he also convinced himself and made up his mind that he was not a coward. And finally, he also entered battle mode. And this time he will try to face a mutated pig. From another direction, after witnessing Luo Feng's actions, Yan Wu was also aware of Luo Feng's aptitude for being a practitioner, because Luo Feng could instantly adapt and read situations carefully. And the fight continues. After the participants killed all the monsters in the area, Yan Wu sensed a much stronger presence coming from an old building. This meant that the exam session was not over yet. Moving to another place, with the sight of the father with two of his friends who had arrived at their client's house. Their sense of amazement was even more pronounced after seeing how big their client's house was this time. And then the three of them did their job. And it turns out, who would have thought that this big and luxurious house belonged to Zhang Haobai's family, who seemed to have an evil plan against Luo Feng's father? Back to the exam's virtual room. Luo Feng and the others had now entered an old building where they could feel the presence of other monsters. Yan Wu told them to stay alert because the quasi-practitioner's exam would not be easy. Not too long ago, the level of danger from the detectors they wore was going up. And that's when the surface of the floor they were walking on broke.
300.
From the billowing smoke that covered the view, they could see the large figure they were looking for, where the figure is able to make ultrasonic waves that are so loud. The creature also flapped its wings, causing several people to be blown away by it. And of course, this monster was a level E threat, a young golden eagle. Because it doesn't stand a chance of being able to beat these creatures. At the end, the people ran out of the building. Because a golden eagle's feathers were harder than diamond, the weapons the people used couldn't do much damage to him at all. Their weapons immediately shattered after hitting the creature's body. In a short period of time, all the participants were wiped out by the Golden Eagle, leaving Luo Feng as the only survivor. Even though he managed to deliver a single thrust while in the air, in the end Luo Feng also had to be defeated by the Golden Eagle. After being thrown back into the virtual world, Luo Feng apologized to Mr. Jiang because he couldn't pass the exam all the way through. But how surprised Luo Feng was when Mr. Wutong said that Luo Feng passed the initial examination session. In fact, the exam session didn't require the participants to beat the monsters, but they are calculated based on the points they get for fighting or avoiding each monster's attack, as well as the warrior's original strength in battle. From the data obtained when Luo Feng faced the tiger monster, Luo Feng had a fist weighing more than 1,000 kilograms. And by the time he faced the Golden Eagle, his reflexes were as high as 28.6 miles per second. With such qualifications, Luo Feng already exceeded what was required to pass the quasi-practitioner examination. Coupled with the level of adaptation and reading of situations, and surviving the longest, made Luo Feng get the highest score when compared to the other participants. Some of the many participants passed the test. Here, Wutong congratulates those who passed the test. But there is still another test, and this one is a battle in the real world. So, Wutong told the participants to get ready, because the next test will be very dangerous to their survival. Then Mr. Jiang brought the 3 people who passed to be given gifts to make them stronger. Because in a real combat test, the 3 of them still don't have enough level to pass it. Okay, continue with part 2. Let's wait for the next video next week.